She had me when she was 19, young, African-American queen, skin held melon and tight like the River Nile. She started out uptown, next door to the Harvard Street hustlers, busters hollering at her backside while she carried her 2 kids to a bus ride. Am I a hustler or a husker? Pops traveled through cocaine surpluses and peacemaker rallies, got smoked by herb near the alley, running through streets like track meets from Cardozo High to the Valley. But this hustling life ain't free, and all the dope fiends would holler, Ricky! See, I come from a long line of slaves who wouldn't stop running for freedom. Got whipped by the whip so bad, the master felt bad in freedom. Am I a hustler or a husker? She called it quits after having 6 kids straight near the Tobacco Road. Looked at Henry and said, who needs them? Bled through the world with a heart so big, her 4-foot frame freed them. While the cop held a loaded gun and screamed, Ricky! Who needs them? See, it's a tricky life they led, from rural roots to an urban scene. And you wonder why the American life is a dream. Vera May found herself with sugar and near death, whispered in his ear, I love you, and sent him to college in the heartland with all she had left. I remember the burial as if it never left. Grandpa Hip said, don't take no wooden nickels, but take everything else. Almost missed my flight, waiting on an addicted driver. Didn't have any money for luggage, but Pop said, son, you're a survivor. So, am I a hustler or a husker? I seldom know the truth, but I know my urban legend helped to free my rural roots. Friends, Omahans, TEDx fans, please lend me your ears. I'm from Washington, D.C., the old D.C. before gentrification, $7 coffee, and dog parks with more capital investment than human services. Born 1981 to 2 loving black parents, aged 19 and 21. They didn't have a clue what they were in for. Older sister about 3, we started out near Howard University on Harvard Street. We lived all over Washington, D.C., frequenting public housing projects in Southeast and Northeast. I always considered myself a neighbor to the leaders of the free world, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton. Just ask them, they knew me. But we really didn't have a chance to stop by and ask for a cup of sugar. In the 1980s, Washington, D.C. would have the largest murder rate in the country and a heavy influx of powder cocaine and crack cocaine. I'm assuming we know the difference by now. Creating an environment riddled with constant moments of violence, fear manifested itself. I was afraid of what might happen in my neighborhood, afraid that my parents might not make it home, afraid of being evicted in front of my friends, afraid that everyone would know that the cops had stopped by our home the night before, or that my dad was in jail and I didn't have a clue when he might return. I feared sitting on that stoop on 14th Street, waiting for my father's girlfriend's red car to pick me up. I expected the excuses. I expect the worst. If you ask my parents today, they'd say, I worried as a child. I did. I cried a lot for them. I prayed a lot for them. And I feared for our lives. I feared for my friends' lives. And I waited. I was a mute child. I feared looking people in the eye. I feared speaking up or speaking at all. In this time, my only true solace was the love of my parents. Even through the addictions, the evictions, the ridicule from friends and neighbors, the jail time, the lies, the mistakes, the violence, the times when my older sister and I would have to fight for our parents' names. Even when my mother stole my birthday money from my pocket, thinking that I was asleep, I found that these things didn't mean that they didn't love me. Love was this tiny morsel of hope I try to cling to. The tiny morsels of hope they sprinkle into my psyche as an 8-year-old child. My father telling me, dare to be different. He made me believe I was special, destined to be a track star like he had been at Cardozo High. My mother would pop me if I spoke with any slang at all. She'd push me to read books even if she might be high. She'd tell me what was right and what was wrong. In this environment, I believe my parents tried their best to fight the cycle of drugs and crime. But it was permeating everything around them. Cocaine was at every party and every musical event. So I feared the nights when my parents would leave, and I feared the days when we'd play outside. Around age 10 or so, I was in my first drive-by shooting. We loved playing throwback tackle football in front of the apartment complex. And one day, as the adults hung out on the block and we played on the field, a car drove by and bullets rang out like an electric drum. I hit the grass with my face planted low. Yes, I feared that too. I feared losing my life to a bullet with someone else's name on it. Due to this early trauma, fear manifested itself in every piece of my life. Fear has a way of pushing you to run from it. My dad in jail, my mom on the street. I was the black maniac McGee, fiction becoming fact. I had nowhere to go. I began to run. From my Aunt Regina's home in Maryland to an upstairs family on 14th Street, I found the gift of running, and I tried everything to screw it up. I'd hide under beds and in closets to avoid track meets. I was the fastest runner in my elementary school, but I feared the starting pistol. I feared losing, and I feared my father's disappointment. He believed that I was destined to be great, like most fathers believe in their children. Hell, my freshman year of high school, I joined the track team, hid in a bus during a race, and quit the next day. I didn't know how to handle losing or winning. Blinded by fear, violence, and disappointment, I couldn't see outside of Project Living, using food stamps and the humiliation it came with, not knowing anything else. I struggled with this existence, not only for myself, but for everyone I'd see, living and dying in this cycle of misery. I wanted out, running from fear and fighting fear by running from it. Running from success like it was some mass murderer hunting me down. My feet, my legs moving fast, my arms moving swiftly, my head looking back at the fear, my eyes always on it, keeping distance between us. Black child, running for freedom, running from what he knew to be. Who was he to be free? I self-sabotaged a full scholarship to American University, failing 3 times on my SAT. But then, my mother, clean and sober, my own North Star, handed me 2 gifts, college applications. One to Midland University, one to Dana College, both in rural Nebraska. Nebraska? Looking forward for the first time ever, seeing what I could be running toward, an entirely different life, I turned my head. Dana would call from the city with the same name as my high school, Blair. I knew I'd be a Dana Viking. Running through BWI Airport with my father, I almost missed the flight. My first flight ever. No time to say goodbye, no money to ship my luggage. A duffel bag and backpack was all I had. I cried like a baby as we arrived at Epley Airfield. I didn't see any skylines of buildings, just cornfields. I received a 3.9 GPA my first semester at Dana. I began to run to my very own freedom and opportunity. If anyone has ever run before, you know the drill. You start out focusing on the difficulties, the pain in your foot, your back, your heavy breathing, sore knees and all. But if you keep moving, eyes on the task at hand, running will release you into a runner's high, where you find yourself focusing on the best parts of the experience, zoning out, in tune with the rhythm of the journey. Overcoming the nagging pains, you feel a sense of euphoria, gaining confidence, losing the shackles that fear, culture, and society had placed on me. I found myself in Nebraska. Sight unseen, Dana's first male national champion. I would break 9 physical records at Dana and 11 total. I would go from a walk-on with a provisional acceptance to the Dean's List several times, to All-American, to the Hall of Fame. I would keep running to where I am today, a change agent, a writer, a poet, a father, a husband, and a son. So I ask you this, what are you running from? And are you sure you shouldn't be looking ahead to what's worth running to? Thank you.